Geriatric care or caring for the elderly touches antinatalism in many different aspects. Many child-free antinatalists are asked the question, if you don't have children, who will care for you when you are old? A similar position on a societal level is taken by many pronatalists and demographers. But there is also another rather immediate question. Should antinatalists care for their parents given that they, the parents, have done the immoral act of bringing those antinatalists into existence? This is an interesting philosophical question and I hope to explore more on that one day. But for now, I am going to be rather busy because my mother will have to go through a rather serious surgery. As a result, antinatalism this week episodes might not be as regular. I have been doing these episodes for 9 months without missing a single week, but now I might miss some, and that's not because I am having a baby. Round of Applause is a Turkish show released on Netflix earlier this year. An article in New Lines magazine talks about the show and about antinatalism incidentally. It explains in detail the characters and the protagonist of the show who goes back into the womb immediately after he was born because he did not want to be born. The show is a blend of comedy and philosophy, and the article gives us a good idea of the context of the messages the show intends to convey. July 11th is World Population Day, and although population ethics are a different subject than antinatalism, they have significant overlap with each other. The Hindu is a famous mainstream newspaper in India. Don't confuse the name with the religion of Hinduism. This is an authentic newspaper with large readership, and they have an article explaining the dire need of contraception in India. It also emphasizes on how women's education continues to be the most effective contraception. 5 submissions as a response to Amanda Suknik and Mati Hairi's book Antinatalism, Extinction and the End of Procreative Self-Corruption were revealed in the latest episode of Exploring Antinatalism podcast. This involved a paper, an essay, a play, a song, and an animated video pressing different colored buttons. Who exactly were those submitters, what the submissions those were, that is all in that video on Exploring Antinatalism podcast. Also, the news is that 2 new big podcast episodes of Exploring Antinatalism are being worked upon, so very much looking forward to those. Nimrod finished his European tour in London, where he was joined by Lawrence Anton and many others to do antinatalism outreach in London's LGBTQ Pride. And by the looks of it, it seems it was a very successful event. Lawrence made a whole video describing the experience. I hope it motivates more antinatalists to do this sort of thing. Lawrence has launched a limited edition of t-shirts of Antinatalist Social Club, which could be bought at around £20 a piece and could be shipped worldwide. You can see Nimrod with his in London Pride and Amanda in the US wearing one. So order now to get your Antinatalist Social Club t-shirt. The link to order will be in the description. There was a video on a very new and small channel by a mother explaining why she thinks she had her child for selfish reasons. She agrees with antinatalist arguments and also says that parents have a moral obligation to their children for their entire lives as they brought their children into existence. It is nice to see such an honest opinion by a parent. I wish a child all the best now that they exist. Minister of Regional Affairs of Malaysia, Dr. Muhammad Naeem Mokhtar, has said that the child-free mindset is against Islamic law. The news article in The Star states the minister quoting hadiths which discourage people from not having children. For example, according to a hadith of the Prophet, he encouraged marrying loving women who can bear many children as he expressed pride in his numerous followers on the Day of Judgment. Now, I'm sure Elon Musk will be very happy reading this. The minister said that people who did medical procedures to eliminate reproductive capabilities, which I assume would be vasectomy for men and procedures like tubal ligation for women, were committing a sin. Now, in the episode of Antinatalism this week of 14 January 2024, we demonstrated an argument presented originally by John Williams about why Muslims who believe in Islamic concept of hell should not have children. Briefly, in Islam, if one leaves the religion of Islam, then they are put in hellfire for eternity. There is always an off chance of your children abandoning Islam, so why take the risk of putting them in hell? The best way to protect them from hell is not to have them at all. If you want to see the entire argument in detail, you can check out the episode of 14 January on why Muslims should not have children. But if you are a moderate or cultural Muslim, Muslim who does not take Quranic verses and hadiths literally, then there is even better news for you. There have been at least three Islamic followers who could be described as proto-antinatalists. First one is Al-Mari, who was a famous 10th century vegan antinatalist blind poet in northwest Syria. He lived during the golden period of Islamic age. Omar Khayyam was a Persian polymath of 11th and 12th century. In his poetry called Rubaiyat, he hints at some antinatalist sentiments. If coming had been of myself, I would not have come. Or if going was of myself, I would not go. But best of all, in this world of earth, were no coming, no being, no going. At another place he says, what out of senseless nothing to provoke a conscious something to resent the yoke of unpermitted pleasure under pain, of everlasting penalties if broke. Farid al-Din Attar was another 12th and 13th century Muslim poet in modern day Iran. In his book of suffering, he says, you ought either not to have created human beings at all, or having done so, you ought to have absolutely guaranteed to them their living and their well-being. So yeah, antinatalist sentiments are not new to Islam and Muslims. There is a paper by Louis G. Merida on why Schopenhauer was not an antinatalist. Louis is also a member of Revista Generas, which is a journal of philosophical pessimism in Spanish. This particular paper on Schopenhauer was also in Spanish, but an anonymous benefactor helped me with the summary of what was being said and why Schopenhauer, according to Louis Merida, was not an antinatalist. Here is that summary. Modern antinatalism is just an extension of pessimism. From the antinatalist standpoint, Schopenhauer could be considered an antinatalist. However, if we distinguish between antinatalism, condemnation of being born, and anti-procreationism, that is condemnation of procreative act, then Schopenhauer could not be considered anti-procreationist. Schopenhauer does not consider individual people but humanity as a whole, which undergoes palingenesis, that is, the will does not die but manifests itself afresh in new individuals. From the perspective of the will, the quality of life of individuals is irrelevant. It is being concealed by the sheer number of people who are born, live, and die. We are condemned to live. Being born is a contract made with the world. A person incurs debt that must be paid by another future person. Suicide and abortion, interruptions in the march of life's inherent logic, are individual people's method of deceiving nature. Natural death, avoided by suicide and abortion, is a salvation that each individual is supposed to offer to the world. Suicide always happens too early and abortion always happens too late. The only form of negation of the will is to avoid the procreative act altogether through chastity. From this perspective, even contraception is infanticide, thwarting the will. Although Schopenhauer is an antinatalist, he is not against procreation, he is against abortion, he is against contraception, and he is against suicide. Once the cycle has started, one has to surrender to nature. Liberation cannot be achieved through violence. Becoming a saint can be achieved through indifference, not in the sense of apathy, but disindividuation, becoming one with the universe. Schopenhauer is not anti-procreationist because of two reasons. One, ethics is about studying motivations, a moral psychology, that is, it is descriptive, not about doing what is good, that is, it is not prescriptive. One can do what one wants, but one can want only what one actually wants and nothing else. It cannot be educated away. Nothing, not even the strongest antinatalist arguments, can stop one from procreation. Second, procreation is always a function of need and lust, never rational. Nobody procreates for the good of the species. Sex is motivated by an illusion of love and various rationalizations. It is impossible to demand that the whole world will be chaste. Schopenhauer himself, who had 2 children and wanted to get married, is an example of that. Eternal justice invalidates antinatalist arguments. The world is fair from the cosmic perspective, from the point of view of everything. As long as we are an embodiment of the affirmative will, we are all morally impeded. The world is what the will wanted, and the person who is born is guilty of being born. He takes part in the transgression of the procreator, draws from his vitality. Both work together. Procreation can only be avoided through virginity and chastity. All non-procreative sexual activity still vehemently affirms the will to live. Both the Childfree and Antinatalists are committing a crime against humanity by making salvation impossible. Nature cannot be deceived. The will can be negated only through voluntary celibacy and asceticism Other forms of misplacing the sexual drive, like contraception and homosexuality, are in fact affirmative. Antinatalists are sexually liberal, and the only moral way of avoiding procreation is sainthood. Modern antinatalism is a false idol which corrupts people who otherwise might be receptive to suppressing the will through chastity. Schopenhauerian antinatalism is unique. The only feature it shares with modern antinatalism is pessimism. There is a degree of reconciliation with life which leads Cabrera to classify Schopenhauer's ethics as affirmative. Schopenhauer transcends pessimism through suppressing the will. Antinatalism has no way of transcending pessimism without collapsing. Modern antinatalism is analytical and utilitarian. It has no transcendental component. For Schopenhauer, creating a person is not worse than being born, it is exactly the same. Nobody is born against their will because the will drives us to life, which would invalidate the consent argument. We should pity both the parent and the child. The anti procreationist, seeing the high price of life, wants to withdraw himself without paying what he owes for it. Motivation, chastity, is more important than the effect, which is non procreation. Thus, Schopenhauer can only be considered antinatalist in the most superficial external sense.